Between her legs, the smell of death. Those few words, thrown in fury by a king, would decide who lived and who died, and change the destiny of an entire nation. You think you know the story of Henry VIII, the cruel monarch with 6 wives, the man who defied the church and built his own religion out of pride. But what if I told you? The fall of a minister, the death of a queen, and the survival of another, all began with one thing: the scent of disgust. This is the untold story of Henry VIII and Anne of Cleves, a tale not of passion or politics, but of manipulation, shame, and power. A psychological war fought in the royal bedchamber, where the smell of a woman became the weapon of a king. January 1540. London is trapped in the grip of an icy winter. The Thames is frozen, and inside the newly rebuilt Whitehall Palace, tension hangs thicker than the smoke from the royal hearth. Henry VIII, once the golden knight of Christendom, now limps through his halls like a wounded beast. 48 years old, his leg rotting from infection, his temper unpredictable as gunpowder. Once adored, now feared. Once the embodiment of beauty, now the embodiment of power and pain. But duty calls again. England needs heirs, and Henry needs a wife. Thomas Cromwell, his brilliant but ruthless minister, has found him one, Anne of Cleves, sister to the Duke of Cleves, a Protestant princess from the heart of Germany. A perfect political match, one that could protect England from the Catholic powers of Europe. France, the Holy Roman Empire, the Pope himself. Henry has never met her. He's fallen in love instead with an image, a portrait painted by the great Hans Holbein. A gentle face, modest eyes, grace without vanity. To Henry, she looked like salvation itself. To Cromwell, she was an alliance wrapped in silk. To Anne, she was being sent to marry a legend. But the truth about legends is that they rarely live up to their stories. New Year's Eve, 1539. Anne arrives in England after a long and brutal winter voyage. She's 24, tall, quiet, raised far from the polished grace of French or English courts. Her manner is simple, her laughter rare, her accent thick. But she's eager to please. She believes truly that she is being married to a noble man, the King of England, defender of the faith. Then comes Rochester, the meeting that should have been romantic. She decides to surprise him, as in the courtly tales she's read since childhood, to greet her future husband in disguise, as love stories tell. She rushes to him, unannounced, dressed as a common woman. Henry turns. He sees a stranger. No music, no love, no smile, just shock and disappointment. The woman before him is tall and awkward. Her skin bears traces of old scars, marks Holbein never painted. Her nose too long, her gestures uncertain, her German accent heavy. Henry stares, his face tightening like a drawn bow. "This is the one I was promised?" he whispers to Cromwell later that night. "She looks nothing like her portrait." "I was deceived, like a man buying a lame horse at a fair. But the treaties are signed. Europe is watching. The marriage must proceed." January 6th, 1540, the coldest day anyone can remember. The great chapel of Greenwich glitters with candles, but the warmth never reaches the groom's eyes. Henry stands before his bride, forced, distant, lips pressed in fury. When the archbishop pronounces them man and wife, Henry barely looks at her. And when the people cheer, their voices echo in the hollow silence between them. To the world, it's a royal wedding. To Henry, it's a sentence. To Anne, it's a mystery she cannot yet name. That night, the palace prepares for their union. Servants scatter rose petals on the royal bed. They light candles. They whisper blessings. They leave. Anne lies trembling under sheets embroidered with gold and pearls, the air thick with wax and incense. The door opens. Henry enters, massive, heavy, wrapped in fur. He's drunk. His breath carries the sourness of wine and old wounds. Each step he takes sends pain shooting up his infected leg. But tonight the king must perform his duty. England depends on it. He sits at the edge of the bed. Anne, shy and frightened, dares not breathe. Henry leans in to kiss her, then freezes. He sniffs again. A shadow crosses his face. Disbelief turns to horror. He jerks away, covering his mouth. "By God," he mutters, gagging. What is that stench?" He stumbles back, choking, his face red with fury. Anne, terrified, tries to speak, but he's already gone. He storms out, limping down the corridor, leaving behind the woman who would never again share his bed. The King of England has just declared war on his own wife. The morning after their wedding night, the king did not rise from his bed. When his servants entered, they found him silent, pale, eyes staring into nothing. He whispered only one thing to his minister, Thomas Cromwell. I cannot touch her. Between her legs, there is the smell of death." Cromwell froze. Those words were poison, not because of their meaning, but because they came from the king's mouth. In Tudor England, the king's disgust was a law. His revulsion could destroy families, erase names, burn kingdoms. And now, that disgust had a target: Anne of Cleves. That night, that single night, became the seed of a national crisis. It spread like plague through the whispers of courtiers. The king's bed had become a battlefield. Cromwell, terrified for his position and his life, did what desperate men do. He ordered the impossible, a cure for a problem that might not even exist. Royal physicians and midwives were summoned in secret. Anne, the new Queen of England, was examined in silence, her body a mystery to be solved. Every morning they inspected her tongue, her skin, her breath. Every evening they forced her into steaming baths of rosemary and vinegar, lavender and myrrh. Her rooms reeked of incense so thick that her maids coughed until their throats burned. Fresh linens were brought 6 times a day. Candles flickered in bowls of perfumed oils. Anne sat quietly through it all, confused, frightened, too polite to protest. No one told her why. No one dared say that her husband believed her cursed. Gaslighting doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with silence, when everyone around you pretends that you are broken until you start to wonder if you are. Anne, a stranger in a foreign court, began to doubt her own senses. She didn't smell anything unusual, but perhaps the king was right. Perhaps something was wrong with her. Cromwell's doctors whispered behind her back, terrified to fail. Because in this palace, failure meant death. Meanwhile, Henry began to rebuild his story. He could not tell Europe that his wife disgusted him. He could not say, "I refused to touch her because of her smell." That would make him a fool, not a king. So he rewrote the narrative. He told his council that Holbein's portrait was a lie, that Anne's body was loose, her skin soft, her breasts fallen, that she must have known another man before him. He whispered these things to his courtiers, and they, eager to please, repeated them. Soon, everyone in the palace knew the truth that wasn't true. Anne of Cleves was unclean. The king's disgust had transformed into doctrine. Disgust became sin. Sin became guilt. And guilt became the weapon Henry would use to escape his own impotence. He was no longer a husband ashamed of failure. He was a righteous man betrayed by deceit. That's how a tyrant saves his pride, by rewriting the story until even he believes it. Anne, unaware of the storm around her, still tried to be a good wife. She prayed. She smiled at her maids. She waited for her husband to return. When her ladies-in-waiting, blushing and whispering, asked her if the king had visited her bed again, Anne laughed softly. "Of course," she said. "He comes each night. He kisses me, takes my hand, and says, 'Good night, dear.' Then in the morning, he kisses me again and says, 'Farewell, sweetheart.' Is that not what all husbands do?" The ladies exchanged horrified looks. They knew what the queen did not, that her marriage was a hollow performance. Henry had never touched her again. He slept elsewhere, drank more, and raged in silence. The woman who thought she had married a man of honor was now trapped in a nightmare. A queen in title, but a prisoner in every other sense. At court, the whispers grew darker. They said the queen carried a disease. They said her blood was foul. They said she had bewitched the king with a foreign curse. Every rumor, every lie, was a reflection of Henry's own fear. He had failed as a husband, and the only way to hide it was to destroy the woman who reminded him of that failure. This wasn't just rejection, it was psychological warfare. Soft male narration, calm but cold. Henry VIII was not just a tyrant, he was a master of perception. A Machiavellian mind who understood that power lies not in truth, but in the stories people believe. Summer, 1540. The same sun that once warmed Cromwell's triumph now burns his downfall. In the eyes of England, he is still the king's most loyal servant. But in Henry's heart, the word trust has turned to poison. The marriage to Anne of Cleves, his grand diplomatic victory, has become a national embarrassment, a living reminder of the king's humiliation. And humiliation is something Henry never forgives. Cromwell tries to survive. He blames the painters, the advisors, even the distance between nations. But Henry sees only one truth. Cromwell gave him a woman he cannot bear to touch. Every whisper in court sharpens into a dagger. Every smile hides a death sentence. Old enemies, the nobles he once destroyed, begin to circle him like wolves. And then comes her. A young woman with laughter like bells and eyes that sparkle with danger. Catherine Howard, niece of the Duke of Norfolk, the family Cromwell once crushed. Henry meets her once, twice, and the old fire returns. The king who limped now begins to dance again. The courtiers know what it means. Catherine Howard is not just a girl. She's a weapon. Whispers spread through Whitehall like smoke. The king's heart has changed, and so must his minister. Cromwell, exhausted, watches from the shadows, his power fading like candlelight before dawn. He sees the truth too late. The same machinery of deceit he built for others is now turning against him. July 1540. Whitehall is silent. The air heavy and still, like before a storm. Thomas Cromwell, once the king's right hand, waits in the council chamber. He does not know that the men he raised will soon bring him down. Guards flood in. Steel flashes in the candlelight. Cromwell rises slowly, disbelief written across his face. My lords, what is this? Duke of Norfolk, by order of His Majesty, Thomas Cromwell, you are under arrest for treason. The papers on the table, his treaties, his triumphs, scatter to the floor like ash. He looks toward the throne room, where Henry once called him brother. Now, the king will not even look at him. The same man who built empires from whispers is destroyed by one. They say Henry never forgave him for the stench that never was. And as Cromwell is led away, he finally understands. In the court of a tyrant, truth dies first. Tower of London, June 1540. The air smells of rain and rusted iron. Thomas Cromwell sits in the cold cell, once the most powerful man in England, now forgotten. His hands tremble as he holds a worn letter, never sent. It begins with 2 words, Your Majesty. He had served the king with all his cunning, all his loyalty. He had destroyed men in Henry's name. Now he waits for the same mercy he once denied to others. The door opens. Boots echo on the stone. Cromwell rises slowly. His eyes meet the man carrying the royal order. He doesn't speak, only nods. He already knows. The morning light cuts through the bars. Outside, a crowd gathers, murmuring like the sea. Cromwell walks past them with bowed head. He does not beg. He does not curse. He kneels before the block, and for the first time in years, he prays. Not for his life, but for England. By evening, his head was displayed on London Bridge, and Henry dined with his new bride, Catherine Howard. The man who built the king's power was devoured by it. On July 28, 1540, the sun rose pale over the Tower of London. Thomas Cromwell, once the most powerful man in England, knelt before the blade he had so often ordered for others. They say he prayed not for mercy, but for understanding. The crowd watched in silence. The axe fell once, then again, and with him fell the last echo of reason. Because in the court of King Henry, loyalty was never truth. It was survival, and survival had a scent stronger than faith. Centuries later, Machiavelli's words would whisper through history. He who builds his power on fear must never let his hands tremble. Cromwell's hands trembled. Henry's heart decayed. And England learned that even kings cannot rule the stench of their own corruption. The age of conscience ended that morning, and the age of Machiavelli truly began.